What is up, everybody? Unrested back again, and this is another day of JFAC. And today I'm gonna kind of go back to a JFAC I talked about not too long ago about choosing your roommates. You don't need to watch that to watch this, so don't worry about it. This is its own little video. But in that video, I talked a little bit about, just make sure it's a person that you can live with, that is as clean as you, goes out as late as you, comes back when you come back. Just pretty much that your schedules match up, that your lifestyles match up, because otherwise it can kind of be hell in Japan. I think that can kind of go internationally, but even more so in Japan because you are really stuck in a very small space with that person. Sometimes you don't even have your own room. So, and what I want to talk about today is kind of my own personal story of what I had to deal with crazy roommates and sweet mates. If you don't know what I mean by sweet mates, that's the people living in the apartment connected to you. That's what we would consider sweet mates. I've heard that definition vary from country to country, but when I speak of sweet mates, I speak of the people who are roommates in the apartment next to you, and you don't really have like a connecting door or anything like that, but pretty much the way it had worked was that I was working for a company called Nova at the time. It was an Ikaiwa that hired overseas. If you don't know what an Ikaiwa is, it's an English conversation school. Usually they would come overseas and hire a bunch of gaijin, bring them over to Japan. You had to pay for your own plane ticket, which was really cheap. It was like $600 only. So I mean that's a crazy cheap trip to over to Japan. But they would secure your job for you. They'd even let you borrow out a loan of $2,000 to get yourself started if you hadn't even saved up any money, which you really should save up money. You shouldn't ever have somebody loan you money when you're jumping into a new country that you're going to have to pay back over the first couple of months that you live there. That's, I think, a little bit too risky. I actually saved up about, if I remember correctly, $2,200 myself before I went over. And that was ample, actually. That was ample until I got my first paycheck. So you can do it, you can make it, you can be okay on that little bit of money. I think I survived 2 months on that. That did not include paying rent because they actually took rent out of our paychecks because they would choose our apartments for us and they chose our roommates for us. So I did not get a choice in who my roommates were, and I did not get a choice in who would be living next to me because they just pretty much rented out a huge block of apartments within an apartment building. So there was often times that you would have, of course, other gaijin living next to you, which is, kind of rare in Japan otherwise. I mean, I would say probably on all 3 sides of me, or I guess it would be like almost like 9 sides of me, all the different sides of my apartment are Japanese people living there now, of course. I think in my entire apartment block that I live in now, which is 10 stories of about 6 apartments on every floor. No, probably 12 apartments on every floor. So think about that. 10 times 12, and only one other person is a gaijin. So that's how rare it normally is for you to have another gaijin living next to you. But in these apartments, you had a ton of gaijin living next to you because they would just rent out a huge block of them, and they'd really rip you off. Nova was notorious for doing this. I had 2 friends who had worked for them. Before I went over to Japan, they'd already returned to the States, and I asked them how to get a job there. They pretty much lined me up with how to do it. They walked me through it, and I went ahead and followed the course and asked them, do you have any advice about the company? Like, what do you think about it? And they said, number 1, Nova treats you like cattle. You are not treated like a human being there, which is very true. And number 2, get out of their apartments ASAP, as soon as possible. And so I set my sights on that. I literally only stayed there 1 month, and this story is going to tell you why. So I get in to Japan my first day, KIX airport, that's Kansai International Airport, and I'm led to my apartment where I'm finding 2 guys who already live there. For the most part, my roommates were actually not too bad. I had a guy from Germany. His name was Maximilian. I remember that because it's a very easy name to remember. And I had a Arabic UK, a guy who's Arabian UK. What would you say? UK Arabian, United Kingdom Arabian man. He was a UK citizen, but he was of Arabian ethnicity. Is that the correct way to say it? Sorry if I'm fouling this up in a way which is not PC. I apologize. I am not in any way trying to be bigot at all. Forgive my lack of knowledge. Anyway, his name was Hasib, and Hasib was a very polite, very nice guy. I think he really had been brought up in a family that really understood how to mind other people's feelings and be conscious of other people living around you. So he was very, very... Maximilian was a very nice guy. He was very polite. He was incredibly intelligent. Like, he knew the history of like every battle everywhere in the world. He eventually actually left the Nova job to be hired by a some Norwegian school that was located in a castle to teach war history. So I mean, the guy was brilliant, but he was a messy guy. He ate messy, he dressed messy. I guess he was kind of like, you ever see that crazy college professor look where like, you know they're smart as hell, but they're totally unkempt? That was Maximilian. But very nice guy, very intelligent. I think he was just a little bit like one of those people that's just so into their studies. It's not that they're trying to be inconsiderate, it's just that they don't even know they're being inconsiderate. So if he ever was inconsiderate, it was only because he was so deep into his studies of just constantly studying the history of wars around the world. I mean, you could literally ask him about any war in the world, and like, he knew like the full history behind it. It was incredible. So I was pretty lucky. They weren't too bad, aside from like, Maximilian would just leave every dish so dirty that you could never clean the grease off of it, and he made the kitchen was already a crazy mess by the time I got there. Our furniture was crap. It was stuff that they'd already bought. You didn't have to buy any of your own furniture. I guess the good thing was they gave you a futon and a heater and a duvet. So you had your own place to sleep. And I had, like, literally my room was like a storage closet. Like, literally it was like a kind of walk-in closet. It probably was not supposed to be an area in which some person lived, but they had 3 of us living in this apartment that was probably made for maybe a couple. Like 2 people who are close together and married and, you know, living there, or maybe 1 person who paid a little bit high rent. We were each paying rokuman gosen, which is like $650 each. So that means they were literally making a profit off of us renting the place. Incredible. So that being said, we had roommates next to us, and our roommates next to us were Bob. Very nice guy. He was an American Mexican. Chris, also an American Mexican. And Todd, who was American Polish guy. They all 3 of them though, they look like total white guys. Like, you know how Give Me a Break Man, you know, he said he's Peruvian, but everybody always calls him a white guy. They look like that. You know, very dark black hair, but their features were very white. So, you know, I'm just trying to set the environment for you, set like the character descriptions and stuff like that, so you can kind of get an image. Bob was kind of a short, fat guy. Chris was taller than me. He was like 6'1", 6'2", very well built. This guy, I mean, he was big into lifting, big into bodybuilding. And then Todd was a lot shorter than me. He was shorter than everyone. He must have been like 5 foot, maybe 5'5", 5'6". I remember being very surprised how small he was. Very unkempt, drank like a sailor, was much older than the rest of us at the time. I was 27, Chris was 25, I think Bob was the youngest at 23, Todd was 33. He had started this journey at 33. There's nothing wrong with that. I started at 27, so I was close to 30 already when I got started. And then my roommates were, I think, they were almost the same age as me. I think they were 26 and 27. So we're all around the same age. Todd's the oldest. It was kind of strange. He was bald on the top and then had a ponytail in the back. So he had one of those haircuts. Yeah, like kind of like, I don't know, like the lead singer of Carcass or something. He drank like so much. Like he drank so much. Like we're talking like he would drink like 6 beers and then finally crack open a bottle of whiskey and start drinking that. Like that kind of drinking. Like that's pretty hardcore in my eyes. If you can go through 6 beers just to get started and crack open a bottle of whiskey. You know, that's like competitive college age drinking. I don't think there was ever a time I could drink that much and not fall over and, you know, piss myself or something. I've never been like a crazy hardcore drinker or anything like that. I do enjoy a drink, but I'm not like, you know, everybody's seen me at the YouTube gatherings. I'm not a crazy alcoholic or anything. Okay, so I've kind of set the stage here. These apartments were kind of ratty, not so nice, kind of old style Japanese apartments, very dark, a little bit of tatami mat except for the kitchen that had the fake wood lamination. And so we were all pretty good friends from the get-go, and it was pretty fun. We hung out, you know, we explored Japan together. We were all new there. Maximilian and Hasib had already been there for a while, so they kind of told us about some stuff to check out. But I, myself, Chris, Todd, and Bob had all come over on the same airplane. Actually, about 40 of us came over on an airplane together. We didn't all meet on the airplane because we didn't even know where we were seated. You know, those kind of airplanes are pretty large, so you're not right next to the person. And we met each other because we lived next to each other. That's how we first got acquainted. And of course, you know, right away they're like, well, hell, let's go out drinking tonight. And yeah, of course, man. You know, you want to explore Japan. You want to find out what karaoke is like in Japan for the first time. You want to just go eat at a sushi place. You know, the most touristy stuff when you first get there. That's your first 3 months, is like you're doing the super touristy stuff. You know, you look outside of a pachinko parlor and think, wow, this place looks awesome. And then you get inside and you realize it sucks. Pachinko is the gambling type place, in case you didn't know. It's smoky, noisy, and kind of annoying unless you're like really into watching silver balls shoot around. So we explored, got to know each other, and here's 2 things I started to notice as we explored Japan together. When we would drink, this is the personalities that we would get. I pretty much always stay the same. I think I'm a lot more talkative, and I'm a lot more friendly. Like, I want to talk to everybody, and I want to be BFFL with everybody. That's kind of just my way of progressing through drunk stages. And Bob was this like flirty dude, man. He would like just flirt with girls like crazy, like to the point that like girls would come up to us and be like, he is too aggressive. And so, you know, we'd have to be like, Bob, you need to calm down. You know, I don't appreciate that kind of attitude. I don't support that kind of attitude. I don't think alcohol gives you any kind of right to do that. So I'm not, you know, not pushing that kind. We had Maximilian, who I guess he talked about how his drinking, like, what would you say, threshold was legendary, and that seemed to be every bit true. Like, you couldn't see any change in him as he drank. Like, he could just drink and drink. He was the German guy, I guess. I don't know, I guess you Germans have like a history of being able to really hold your liquor, man, because this guy, he just didn't change. Hasib never drank. It was part of his religion, I believe, to not drink. So he wasn't, and the cool thing about him was he wasn't like, fuck you guys for drinking, you know, I'm teetotal, you know, I'm straight edge or anything. He never mentioned it, and he would hang out with us, and he wouldn't complain about anybody getting drunk or acting drunk or being obnoxious, which I'm sure we were. And he still hung out with us just the same. I myself, when I drink, I have like, you know, maybe 2 beers, 2 chew high, whatever. I try not to let myself get too out of hand. But, you know, I take my time. I go gradual. I think the biggest problem with me is I get sleepy really easy if I drink too fast or something, so I try never to drink too fast. And then here's the other 2 people that our story's going to revolve around mostly. When Todd would drink, he would get really confrontational and just attack people aggressively or provoke people aggressively for like no reason at all. For example, I'll give you one example. We would come over, we left our doors unlocked in Japan. It's not really a huge deal to leave your doors unlocked, especially when you always know somebody's home. And we both would leave our doors unlocked, and whenever we needed something, we would just walk into the other person's place. Like, you know, you just walk into the foyer. You wouldn't just like storm into their kitchen and be like, I need salt or something, you know. So we used to do that, and we would just, move into the other person's place, like open up the door slightly and say, hey, excuse me, like, can I borrow some butter or something like that? Or, hey, does anybody want to go out? We're about to head out. Like, you just open the door and do that. Like, you wouldn't just like barge in or like open someone's bedroom. That would be definitely invasion of privacy. So we weren't that disrespectful, but we did, poke our head in just to check out what each other were doing. in a very friendly way, like, you know, not trying to be Snoopy or anything like that. And both of us did this. All three people from both apartments did this back and forth over and over again. And just one day, out of nowhere, when I did it, Todd was in there by himself drinking. And I guess he had drank to a point where he was like that aggressive, provoking mode. And I walk in, and he's like, "Hey, what the fuck? You don't even knock, man? What the fuck? You think you can just walk in here like you own this place?" Like, he just started. Like, I didn't come in there being like, "Hey, dickhead, what are you doing?" Or so. I just walked in, I was like, "Hey, is anybody going out tonight?" Like, I think that's all I asked. I came in there just to ask that. And he's like, "Whoa, wait a second, you didn't even knock. Fuck you, man." Like, and I was just like, "Whoa, what's going on?" Like, I was like really taken aback. Like, it was kind of just like all of a sudden the rules had changed. Now, mind you, I guess this wasn't an established rule, so I guess he could have the right to suddenly enforce that rule, but it seemed he was doing it in the most aggressive manner possible. Let's put it that way. And I was just like, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry." Like, you know, I just kind of like, "Okay, fuck you then." And I just left. Like, and he's like, "No, you don't just leave, man. You need to come in here and fucking apologize." And I was just like, "Man, fuck this guy. This guy is a fucking dick." And I was just like, "Oh, okay, man." Like, and I just didn't, like, I gave him one of those kind of like, "Oh, I see what kind of mood you're in. Bye." Like, kind of feelings. So I kind of didn't talk to him much after that. After a while, I was like, "Holy shit, that dude's a fucking psycho." Like, he just like flips on a switch. Now, the other thing was Chris was a very nice guy. When he did not drink, Chris, this is the bodybuilder, big dude. When he did not drink, he was a very nice guy. And something I really liked about Chris was that he was, even though he was like this hardcore jock bodybuilder, loved to work out, like talked about protein and shit all the time, his favorite things were some of my favorite things. He loved Warhammer 40K. He loved to read like RPG novels, like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. I don't know. He used to play football in high school, and he was a bodybuilder in high school, and he was like the epitome of a jock, but the dude loved RPGs, which I'd never met a person like that before. You know, it was either one extreme or the other at my school. It was either like, you are the utter nerd like myself. Well, I guess I ran cross country, so I wasn't 100% nerd, but you're either that or you were like, you know, the hardcore jock was like, "Fuck you, D&D nerds." Like, so he was kind of this mix, and I was like, "Wow, that's really interesting. I want to really get to know him." But when he would drink, again, it was like a fucking switch flipped. I mean, it was like night and day with him. Like, Todd was kind of always a consistent dickhead, even when he wasn't drunk. Like, he was always kind of aggressive, always kind of provocative. But Chris was like super nicest dude you ever met. Flip a switch, and he's just like looking to start a fight. It's the kind of person who can instantly turn a party not fun when they get drunk, because they make it such a tense situation. So, and he was a big dude, so he didn't really take shit from anybody when he did flip his switch. Like, if someone was like, "I'll kick your fucking ass, bro," he'd be like, "Bring it!" Like, you know, you're just like, "Okay, maybe I won't kick your ass." Like, so you were just, you know, you were just kind of like, I guess if you were out with him and he got drunk and in this aggressive mode, it was like trying to bring around a caged beast that you'd have to tell people, stay back, you know, 500 feet away, or, you know, this dude's gonna like bite your arm off. And that was always a little bit rough. But I guess we never really did anything to get on his bad side, even when he was drunk. So Chris never really came after us, the other roommates and the suite mates, except for Todd. So Todd, being the type of person who would constantly lash out, drunk or not drunk, but even more so when he was drunk, was lashing out like at everyone all the time. Like, I mean, he'd lash out at people for small ass shit. Like, he would accuse them of like stealing his food. He'd accuse them of stealing his alcohol, his beer. Like, it looked like he was the kind of guy who like really went out of his way to start a fight, which was really kind of surprising to me, because the dude was, I mean, he was out of shape. He had like this big beer belly. He was like one of those skinny fat guys, like beer belly, but then like pregnant worms for arms, you know. Like, like, he just looked weathered. Like, you know, someone who looks older than their time because they've drank too much, or someone who's older than their time because they've done too much drugs. Like, his face had that kind of look to it. He was like 5'4", which I'm not harping on small people, but if a dude is a 6'2" bodybuilder and you're 5'4", I'm gonna put my money on the bodybuilder who's 6'2". And so eventually it was inevitable that these two were going to, you know, butt heads. Eventually their drinking was going to match up at the same time, where both people had flipped their switches and confront each other. So I don't know what eventually set Todd off that he yelled at Chris one day, but he yelled at him really bad. Like, he was just like, man, fuck you, you stole my beer, you stole my food. And like, I don't think Chris actually did do this. Like, Chris wasn't poor or needed to do that and wasn't the kind of person who stole. And the said beers were later found, like, moved into some part of the apartment that I guess maybe drunkenly he had put them there. So it did eventually turn out that no one had stolen them, or if they did, they had put them back. Nonetheless, Todd was still pissed off about this. My personal theory is that he was so drunk he didn't realize he didn't put them in the refrigerator and had put them in a cabinet instead. I think that can easily happen with a drunk person. They can misplace something. So anyway, after that, Chris had kind of an ill will towards Todd, but not in a way that he was like, I'm gonna fucking kick this guy's head in. But he was always just like, man, fuck this guy, what's his problem? And then, while we were there, Chris would always show us pictures of his girlfriend, very beautiful girl, and he knew he was only staying in Japan 1 year and that he couldn't wait to get back to his girlfriend. He'd talk about her a lot, how much he missed her and stuff. We could kind of all understand this. We had all left family, friends, and loved ones behind, so, we were like, yeah, man, makes sense. But then one day, out of nowhere, like, she had been talking to him less and less, and he just kind of figured it was the time zone situation, because it is sometimes hard to link up. She dumped him while he was there. So, oh man, so Chris's drinking picks up a ton, man. Now he's drinking like every night. So the chance of him and Todd meeting up both with their switches flipped and drunk goes up a notch. So eventually, Chris is drunk one night and he's walking around with my friend and I, Dave, who was from another apartment, and my other roommate, Hasib, is there with us, and I think Bob was there with us too. No, actually Bob was with Todd and Maximilian was with Todd, and they had just gone out earlier because they had gotten off of work earlier, and we were out too on the town, and the whole night, like, Chris had started drinking, I think, really early. Like, he got out at like 3:30, so he'd started drinking already. So by like 7:30, he's fucking trashed, and he's just like, man, you know that fucker Todd, I'm gonna fucking kill him. And we're just like, all right, man, I know. And like, every once in a while he'd mix in a thing like, God, I fucking miss my girlfriend. And you're like, oh man, yeah, that shit's rough, man. And so, you do your best to console a friend who's in pain. You know he's in pain because he just lost his girlfriend. She just dumped him. And you've been there, man. You know how it feels. You feel like shit, dude. You're not going to sweep it under the rug and be like, fucking man up. Like, it hurts, dude. And so we tried to be there as best we could, but at the same time, you can only say so much. Getting over a breakup with a person totally happens with you. It happens internally. There's nothing someone's going to say that's going to suddenly patch that up or fix it. It's almost the same as when someone dies. No one's going to say something that finally patches it up for you. There might be something they say that helps you get closer to patching it up, but it happens inside you. You heal inside you. You really heal all your own wounds. You are responsible for healing all your own wounds. And I'm not saying you need to do it by yourself and not get any help from anybody, but the healing comes from within you, is what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, we can only do so much. And it's only been like the first couple of nights that this has happened, so we don't know the full story of how they broke up. We're not going to try and bug them and tell us why she dumped you and stuff. But I think more or less the reason was distance. That happens quite a bit in Japan. So he's fucking, overwrought. He's weeping about that 1 second and wanting to punch a wall in the next second. And then Todd's fucking wasted too, and he's with Bob and Maximilian, and Todd's just wasted like his normal self. And I remember I saw him pass by that night at one point because, Japan's a pretty small area. Like, I mean, if you live in an area where everybody's walking to downtown together, you're probably going to pass each other at some point because downtown is such a small little area. Like, what you would consider a big distance in America would be massively distant in Japan, and what you would consider a long distance in Japan would be a very small area in America. So you pass some of the same people every day. You pass some of the same people on the train. You take the train with the same people. You may never talk to them, but you tend to see a lot of the same people everywhere you go. It's a big city with a small town atmosphere. I guess that's the best way to put it. Or a big city atmosphere with a small town feel. There, that's better. That's a better definition. So we passed by him. I remember when we passed by him, like, I kind of got Chris distracted so he wouldn't see Todd and like run over there.
because he was with Maximilian and Bob, and we had called them up early and we're like, look man, Chris is on a fucking rage fest, like let's keep these two motherfuckers away from each other all night. So literally Dave and I are trying to keep Chris away from Todd, who Bob and Maximilian are making sure to keep away from each other. Or I should say, I messed that up. I said Hasib and I are trying to keep Chris away from Hasib, Dave, and I are trying to keep Chris away from Todd, who's with Bob and Maximilian. And we called those two guys. They're a little bit drunk, but they're not so wasted that they don't get the point. They get the point. They said, okay, we need to keep these two away. We don't want. No one wants to see a fight. No one wants to see blood spill. You know. So it's the night starting to wind down. We've done stuff like go to karaoke. We played some Gears of War on an Xbox, I remember, and Chris is kind of still like moaning at the end of the night that, you know, he misses his girlfriend. We're like, yeah, bro, I know it must hurt and stuff. And we kind of like get him settled into bed. We don't really baby him into bed. We're like, all right, bro, I think we're going to crash. How about you head to bed too? And he's like, yeah, maybe I should. And we're like, yeah, you probably. So we walk him down to his bed. I remember we made sure we watched him like crash in his futon and just pass out. We're like, okay, we can fucking chill out. Like, I think we did actually go to bed a little bit later. It was like midnight when we finally went to bed. But we wanted to make sure he was in bed first because we knew when Todd came home, those two both lived in the same apartment. If Chris was just like sitting there boiling when Todd came home, he was just going to get his face pulverized. So anyway, it eventually, you know, Todd comes home too. And I guess the thing is, Todd was so drunk that he was like stumbling, I remember. Todd was so drunk that like, you ever see someone when they're so wasted that like every little pebble on the ground they stumble over, like every little like curb and twist and turn in the sidewalk like becomes like a fucking mountain for them to get over and stuff? Like he was like that kind of wasted. And so pretty much we think, all right, he's probably too fucked up to even try to start a fight, so we don't worry about it. We stay in bed too. 2 a.m. I wake up to screaming. Okay, I've already gone to sleep. I've probably been asleep 2 hours. I wake up and I hear yelling, and I'm like, oh shit. The yelling is coming not from the balcony, but from the hallway, which is like a balcony hallway in the apartment complex. So I want you to imagine that all the apartments are, of course, indoor apartments, and then to traverse your way through the apartment building, you actually have balcony-esque type hallways that allow you to traverse the entire building. And I think the building was tall. Like we were up on the 19th floor. That's right. So we were up high. And they're out there on that hallway, and I can hear it. It's Todd and Chris, and something's happened where they've met in that hallway. And Todd was like, "Hey, get out of my way! I'm going like to somebody's apartment." I can't remember what he mumbled. But he's like, "Fuck you! I will not get out of your way." He was like, "Todd, I will fucking pick you up and throw you over this fucking hallway into the goddamn floor, 19 goddamn stories down." Like, I mean, he was going nuts, and like, I was like, oh shit. And like, Todd is like, I think Todd knows like, this is not a situation in which he needs to like fight back, that he's like outmatched. You know, Chris towered over this dude. And so he's just like, what the fuck, man? I didn't even fucking say anything, man. Come on, man. So, I don't know what exactly happened, but it progressed to a point where eventually Todd ran off, I heard he just like ran for the elevator, went downstairs, and like didn't sleep at the apartment that night. I don't know what he did. I think he just went out and drank all night. So, yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, he must have. Okay, because this is how the story progresses. It makes sense that he did that. So he went down the elevator, went back out to go keep drinking, and I guess after finally blowing off some steam, you know how like you get your heart real worked up and fucking raged out, like you're totally tired after that. So I think Chris finally crashed, like the adrenaline finally like, you know, went down in his system, and he could finally rest easy knowing he had yelled at the beast. I don't know what his situation was, but I guess he had to get that out of his system, and he did, and he went to sleep. At 9 a.m., I hear some kind of more yelling from their apartment, and I have to go to work that day, so I head off to work, and I don't get time to go over to the apartment and find out what was being yelled about. And I remember when I get to work, I know Chris had the same shift as me, and I'm like, where the hell is Chris, man? Like, where the hell is he? Is he okay? Like, what happened? Chris comes in around noon, around lunchtime, and he's like, fuck, man. And I'm like, what happened, bro? Are you okay? Like, I heard some yelling last night and then some yelling today, and I heard you and Todd kind of get into it in the hallway last night. Is everything all right? And he's like, do you know what that motherfucker did? And I was like, no, tell me what happened. And he said at like 6 or 7 a.m., when I heard the yelling inside the apartment the next morning when I woke up, Todd had come to his room and had bought a knife, like some kind of cooking knife, in the middle of the night, and leaned over Chris, like, I guess, like, Chris is laying down in his bed in his futon, and Todd came over to him, like, you know, kind of straddled his chest, I suppose, because, you know, Chris is a big dude, laid over him, held a knife to his throat and woken him up and said, if you ever fucking try to intimidate me or provoke me or threaten me again, I'll fucking slit your throat in your sleep. He literally did this with a knife. And I mean, these are like professional people I'm working with. We dress up in suit and ties every day and teach English lessons. Okay, so it's a bit wild to me, yes. And I was like, holy shit, are you serious? He's like, I was like, well, what did you do? Did you call the police? Did you call, like, you know, Nova and let them know what happened? So he's like, yeah, you know, I called the police. The police were like, you should tell your job since they're putting you with somebody, you know, who seems kind of dangerous. Call them first and see if they'll do anything. So he called them and they're like, oh, yeah, that's pretty bad, man. Whoa, Okay, well, I guess, you know, you could move out to another apartment or something, or, you know, what do you want to do? And so that's all they did. Like, they didn't want to fire Todd or anything. I guess they both took him into an office and asked about it, and Todd just lied through his teeth. He just like, I don't know what he's talking about, a knife? I don't know anything about that. And he's like, all I know is Chris threatened me in the hallway. So apparently he lied it off even when they had like kind of a meeting to see what had really happened. The company did. And all that they have ended up doing was saying, hey, Chris, you know, you can move your stuff to another apartment. They got him into another apartment that was much farther away. It actually made it harder for him to get to work. And Todd stayed in that apartment next to me, which scared the shit out of me because now I had a knife-wielding psycho, like, living next to me. So, luckily I had taken my friend's advice, and by the first couple of weeks I had been there, I had already looked at new apartments, and I was moving out by, like, the end of the first month. I will say every day I exited my apartment, I looked both ways in the hallway to make sure Todd wasn't out there. And I almost never saw that guy again. A long time, like probably 3 or 4 years down the road, I saw Todd was still in Japan. Chris has gone to Korea. And Todd was in Japan for a while. He was dating some girl I know because I just saw him walking with some girl who was definitely his girlfriend at the time. I don't know where they are today, man. Todd might still be in Japan. He may have gone home. I don't know. I totally didn't try to keep in contact with that guy. He scared the shit out of me. And Chris, we stayed in contact a little bit after that. I think he ended up marrying a Japanese girlfriend that he was living with at the time. And they moved to Korea because they had both gotten jobs in Korea. So I think his life turned out pretty good. Todd's life, possibly he's still in Japan teaching English. So just know that if you may have hired a knife-wielding maniac to teach you English. Kind of scary, right? Anyway, that's a story, a very, very long story, apparently, now that I look at the time, about some of the craziest suite mates and roommates and why you too should be careful about who you choose to be your suite mate or roommate. That being said, this was JFEC. I am Unrested. If you like what you saw here today, please like, comment, and subscribe.